unprecedented fire season is the new normal. Does that necessitate more aggressive action to deal with it? I spoke with Environment Minister Steven Guilbeault to ask him just that in the smoke outside on Parliament Hill. Have a listen. Hi, Minister. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Vassy.
I appreciate you making the time.
It's my pleasure.
I feel like we woke up in Ottawa, in Montreal, in Toronto today with something we are not used to at all, right? And we see it right now, the smoke, and you can actually smell it for people who are watching. You can taste it. What does that say to you?
Well, in our nation's capital today, the air quality index is worse than it is in Mexico City, than it is in Jakarta, that it is in many Indian city like Kolkata. And that is a direct result of the forest fires. And people would say, well, we've always had forest fires. What's new? Well, this year, the area that's being burned is 10 times the normal average. In Alberta, we've almost surpassed 2016, which was one of the worst years in terms of forest fires. Fort McMurray had to be evacuated. It's the worst year in Nova Scotia for forest fires. It's likely the worst year in Quebec. And today is June 6th. We're not in the middle of July. We're not at the end of the month of August. We're at the beginning. We're not even in summer yet. So it is likely going to be a very difficult summer from the point of view of heat, of dryness, and of forest fires in Canada.
Based on what you know about the effects of climate change, do you anticipate what we are seeing right now is basically the new normal?
Well, unfortunately, we know that because of increased global temperatures and climate change, we will have more episodes like forest fires, like hurricanes. We saw Fiona last year. Atmospheric rivers, we saw them in BC. California had 8 of them last year. This is likely going to be something that we're going to get used to and to be more prepared for in the future. I
want to talk about 2 things with respect to that. The first around adaptation and the second around mitigation, which is of particular significance rather to your file. On adaptation, your government did introduce in the fall an adaptation strategy that includes a number of targets, for example, around fires and how to mitigate them. I'm wondering if, given what we're seeing right now, your government thinks it's time to rethink and perhaps be more aggressive about some of the targets laid out in that strategy.
Well, so it's a very good question. What we presented last fall was the federal action plan on adaptation. So it's not the national adaptation strategy. Since then, and even before that, we've been working with provinces, territories, Indigenous nations, municipalities, companies, experts in the field to develop a national adaptation plan. So how do we as a nation better prepare for the impacts of climate change like what we're seeing? The federal government has an important role to play. We've invested so far more than $6 billion in the last few years on adaptation measures. We know it's only the beginning. And we also know that the federal government can't do everything. We need to work in partnership with other levels of government, with other partners, to ensure that it's an all-hands-on-deck approach to helping Canadians be better prepared to face climate change.
We're also hearing, though, from the federal government about resources being stretched. And to be fair, provinces are saying that as well, right? In your province of Quebec right now, there was a point at which the premier of that province said we might have to let some communities go because we simply don't have the resources to address the sheer volume, the scope of the fires that are burning out of control. So I'll pose the question again, does that necessitate, and I acknowledge that the provinces have a huge role to play here, but does that necessitate a more aggressive posture around adaptation led by the federal government?
Well, we need to do more. I totally agree, and we've made an investment of $6 billion. We know it's basically a down payment. We know we will need to do much more when it comes to helping Canadians be better prepared. And listen, we will pay one way or the other. And if we invest, it's going to cost far less than if we just have the impacts and witness the impacts of climate change. A dollar invested in being better prepared will save us $15 down the road. So, and that's well understood by Cabinet, by the Finance Minister, by the Prime Minister. So we are willing to do more and to go at it more aggressively.
So the other side of the coin, the same coin, is action to combat climate change. And it's in that vein that I want to ask you about the targets that your government has set, the overarching target of reaching net zero by 2050. A few months ago, back in March, the IPCC released a summary report, one of the most significant ones in a very long time, that prompted the Secretary General of the UN to say, developed countries should take this and be more aggressive about that target and should instead aim for 2040 over 2050. At the time, I know you were asked about it very shortly after the release. You said your government would think on it. Have you reached a conclusion one way or the other?
We know we also need to be more aggressive when it comes to fighting climate change. Because the more we do now, the less our kids and grandkids will have to do. And it's a long-term problem. Like, we can't flick a light switch and fix climate change overnight. If I make a parallel with the ozone depletion, we signed in Montreal an historic agreement in 1997 on helping to fix the ozone layer. It was the talk of the time then. We know now that the ozone layer will have recovered from the damage we created probably around 2060. So it will have taken about 70 years to fix that environmental problem. We're talking decades to fix climate change. The more we do now, the better it is. We are looking. We have a target for 2030. We are working on developing the plan to achieve those targets. And once we do that, I'm confident that we'll be able to say, okay, well, we know we can get there. Let's be even more aggressive. But I think first it's important to be able to demonstrate that we can get to what we committed to do before we say we'll do more.
And I do understand that, and that certainly has been a vulnerability of earlier stages of your government and governments before that. But I guess if I'm trying to figure out as a Canadian how aggressive this government will be, if the actions will match the rhetoric, for example, of yourself or other ministers, am I to interpret from that you are open to the possibility of moving to a 2040 target for net zero, or that it is off the table at this moment until more plans are released regarding 2030?
Two things I'd like to say. In 2020 and 2020, well, in fact, between 2019 and 2021, Canada has the best performance of all G7 countries when it comes to fighting climate change. Better than Germany, better than France, better than Japan, better than the US. Who would have said that? 5 years ago, we were amongst the worst. We've made significant progress, but we need to make significant progress. Am I saying that I'm throwing offhand saying that Canada might reach carbon neutrality by 2040? Absolutely not.
It is possible, you think?
I can't tell you now whether or not we can do it, but what I can tell you is we will look at the possibility of doing it for sure.
And do you have a timeline for how long you'll do that? And I ask again against the backdrop of what we're looking at here, right? And Canadians who are dealing with the exceedingly severe impacts of what's happening with climate change. I understand that it's not a decision you can make right away, but the report came out a number of months ago. Is there a timeline you can offer by which you're able to tell Canadians we can or can't be more aggressive than what we've already determined?
What would greatly help our capacity to accelerate our fight against climate change in Canada is if I didn't have to fight with certain jurisdiction all the time on doing the bare minimum to fight climate change. If I would have to fight the Conservative Party of Canada, who think that we should make, in the midst of what will likely be Canada's worst year in forest fires, who say we should make pollution free again in Canada and allow the biggest polluters to pollute as much as they want.
I'm not sure they're exactly saying that. I understand what you're saying about them, and they deserve hard questions, but they're not saying big emitters shouldn't pay. They're saying that individuals shouldn't be penalized.
Well, if you make big corporation pays, chances are that they will pass on that bill to consumers. And the Conservative Party of Canada had that in their election in 2021 election platform. So they are in fact saying that. They are in fact saying let's make pollution free, because you can't impose things on large emitters and say, oh, you can't pass those costs on to consumers. Some may do it, some may not, but it is a possibility, and that's what carbon pricing is about, and to make fossil fuels more expensive so that alternatives become more competitive.
I know your time is limited, and I just want to push back, if I could, respectfully on that, because I think you're absolutely right. The Conservatives deserve hard questions on their climate policy or lack thereof. But my questions are to you and what your government is prepared to do. They don't inhibit you from being more aggressive on climate change targets because you have the support of other parties.
They're blocking the adoption of a bill that would...
They're delaying it.
Well, they're in the Senate, they're blocking it right now, of a bill that for the first time in the history of Canada would enshrine in our laws a right to a healthy environment in the midst of what we're seeing. That's what the Conservative Party of Canada is doing.
But again, they don't have the power by themselves to do that right now, given the configuration of Parliament. I'm just asking because is it entirely fair to, and I'm not saying again that they aren't free from scrutiny, they should be scrutinized for what they're saying, but is it accurate to say that they're the ones inhibiting you and your government from being more aggressive?
They with others who are trying to prevent climate action, but it shouldn't stop us. You're absolutely right, which is why in the last year I've announced new regulations to ban a certain number of single-use plastics. We've put in place new regulations to reduce the greenhouse gas impacts of the fuels we consume. consumed, the Clean Fuel Standard. We're putting in place zero-emission vehicle mandate to ensure that the vehicles that we use are less and less emitting. We're putting in place a cap on the on the emissions of the oil and gas sector. We're putting in place new regulations to fight methane, a very powerful greenhouse gas. All of these things I've done in the last year and a half, and I'm just getting started.
Minister, I'll leave it there. I appreciate your time very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.